Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. It's pre-season, we're well underway, and the podcast is fully involved in pre-season as well. Phil's had his 90 minutes already in the first show of the season, so he drops out, and Callum in for a long-awaited return. Callum, delighted to get you back on the show. How have you been?
Good, thank you. I've been away to Albania. Got an Albania shirt with Ramadani on the back that I
Of
paid
course.
probably over the odds for. So I've had a great time so far. I'm glad the football's returning in some capacity, at least for us, because it's been quite a long summer without it. But we're back, and yeah, I'm here for my 90 minutes. Feel like I'm up at Turf for this one. Punted up there, but we're back in business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you were at Turriff recently, or Tesco, I suppose, but we've taken you off the stock shelves, and you're back in the big time. Coming up on the episode today, we will review the action from Cove, where both of us were in attendance. We'll maybe speak about the players that were put to Turriff, and what that might mean. Can we read much, if anything, into it? We'll recap the Dons live event that I was at on Sunday as well. And the Dons today, Monday, as we're recording this live on the 15th of July, announcing a couple of cooperative agreements with clubs in League One and League Two. So we'll look at that and what that means as well. And as ever, you can see the Scottish Cup t-shirt that we've got in the background here on the video on YouTube. Link in the description below. And I just want to say before we get into it, Callum, I think the response to the t-shirt's been fantastic. Neil at Pretty Grim letting us know that we're just 2 orders away from being able to have handed over £200 to Lifestars. Of course, all profits from the t-shirts go into that. So a big thanks to Neil again for his efforts in helping us design it. But you guys at home for buying the t-shirts and us being able to donate that money to a worthy cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Neil did a great job. And my logo that I made / Caitlin helped me make is on it. And that reminds me, I need to buy one myself, and we'll boost that total a little bit as well. And more mementos for winning the Scottish Cup. So for a good cause, get involved, folks.
Exactly, and you said a good memory as well for the event. One thing that might not live long in the memory, though, Callum, is Saturday's game in Foggy Cove. Of course, everywhere else in the northeast seemed to be bathed in glorious sunshine, apart from Balmoral. Delighted to see some action, albeit maybe a bit tough through the fog at times.
Yeah, I mean, it was dull, wasn't it? It was nice to be back at the football, first of all, certainly. And as we were there with my dad, we went for a little lunch at the Wellington beforehand, so that was nice. Probably the highlight of the day, to be fair. A little bit dull, weather not great until the second half. The sun peeped out, but I thought building into it, I thought, oh, this will be great. Football in the sun. What more could you ask for? Then just grey skies and fog all around, at least for the first 45 minutes. But it wasn't the most thrilling, was it, Glenn?
No, it wasn't. First time for most of us, obviously, to see some of the new players. Also, first time seeing, maybe for some as well, the new kit up close in person. Thoughts on the new kit changed after seeing it in action, Callum?
I think it looked nicer, yeah, seeing it in action, but I thought it looked incredibly baggy on everybody, which I thought was weird. Sort of a throwback, I guess, to sort of the 90s when it was baggy fits, and then we sort of moved away from that. It felt like, but it looks all right. I think it looks just so much better when the collar's not done up. That's my thoughts. But yeah, it looks nicer on the players, I suppose, than it does me being modelled by me or perhaps Phil, as he posted that on Twitter, which I think he looked great.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was good to see some of the players, new players in action. I think that was the main thing that I took from it. I quite enjoyed seeing some of the just learning a little bit more about them, as it's I don't watch the Australian League very often, funnily enough.
no, and I think, yeah, for all that the game was dull, I think the biggest thing we also have to remember is this really was about getting minutes in the legs, and it was very evident of that it was our second game of pre-season, having played 90 minutes over in Portugal and losing that game 2-0. The Dons coming away at 2-0 victors from the game on Saturday. It wasn't two different 11s. I think it was 8 changes made at half time, but in the first half, I think obviously at the time when the squad was announced, not knowing that Esther Sokler had been punted up to Turriff, Peter Ambrose not involved at all. Maybe signs, as Phil mentioned on the last episode, about the need for a striker to come in, seeing Kusini Yengi as the only striker. Fletcher Boyd, I don't think would you class him as a striker?
No, he's sort of a number 10, I guess, for me. But I noticed also that he was dropping rather deep as well at times against Cove too. But yeah, Kusini Yengi, and then for the second half, I thought, who's actually playing up front here? At one point, I noticed Nicky Devlin had made a marauding run through the middle from left back, and then obviously grabbed the goal as well. But yeah, I think it certainly does highlight the need for another striker. I mean, the jury's out on probably both Sockler and Ambrose. And of course, the likelihood is that Sockler just wasn't involved on the plastic pitch as well due to his injuries last season and needing more time as well out there to build that fitness to hopefully avoid such disaster in the next season.
In terms of Yengi, I got for 45 minutes. Thoughts on that 45 minutes? I think, if anyone thinks we're going to be critical of performances here, we're absolutely not. We know it's pre-season and we know it's only 45 minutes. I do think the pitch did have a bit of a factor in some of the performance, but first impressions of Yengi?
He was probably the one you could come away from that knowing the least about, because there wasn't an awful lot created for him. He had a couple headers that sort of went over the bar, and then the chance where he laid it on a plate for Milanovic. When initially I thought, why is Yengi not just taking it on himself? But to be fair, was an open goal for Milanovic. There wasn't an awful lot to take from the performance from Yengi. I don't think, just because there wasn't a lot of chances for him, and as you say, the pitch didn't help. I thought he sort of linked well at times, from the sort of the minimal chances that there was with the sort of supporting cast. But again, there wasn't too much in that first 45 for him that we can take bits of. Oh, he looks good in these situations.
Yeah. I thought he did well at times to kind of peel off defenders and look to have that space, as you mentioned, had that chance with a header that he put over the bar. I kind of shared the same thought about you with whilst it was incredibly unselfish from a striker to set up Nicholas Milanovic, and it's going to be definitely up there for miss of the season from Milanovic, scooping over from 2 yards out with an open goal. I also thought, why is our striker not going for that? But he's I guess he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't in that situation. If he's selfish and misses, everyone says, why didn't you square it for Milanovic? He squares it, Milanovic misses, it's why didn't you take on the shot? So I guess in these instances you can just thank God it's pre-season. But yeah, I kind of agree overall that there's not really much to take away. I think I said to Keith I thought he was a bit gangly at times in the way he was running, but there was a few good touches in there. And again, I go back to that point. You could quite clearly tell it was only our second game of pre-season in comparison to Cove, who'd obviously have a few more games under their belts and are in League Cup action tonight.
Yeah, it was very evident that we were just sort of we're starting to build. Basically, a lot of that was about fitness and getting players these minutes and building towards the later friendlies before the league campaign. I thought Yengi. Well, the only other thing we can really take from that is looks a big physicality sort of player as well, which I guess is a good thing. Certainly in Scotland, if you can be big and physical, then that is half the battle most of the time.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing that Freddie said when, he came on to do the preview of him, that he is physical. And I was kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever, from the pictures you see of him. But agreed, seeing him in real life, I thought he was a lot broader in the shoulders and does have that physical presence. Another new signing that I said I was particularly excited by was Nicholas Milanovic. Looked good in glimpses. I think it's very clear he's very left-footed. From that 45 minutes as well. Your thoughts on his performance?
Yeah, I agree on very left footed. I liked how much he was wanting to just cut in and leather a shot at the goal, though. I really enjoyed that. Because if he can bring that into competitive action, how many times did we see players reluctant to do that sort of last season, reluctant to just take the shot on and see what happens? So I liked seeing that from him. And I liked the fact that even though he did miss, it did look like the pitch made it take a little bobble. Not to,
Yeah,
I think on a plastic pitch, no, sorry, on a grass pitch, that probably hits the back of the net.
yeah,
And I like the fact how he responded to that, because I think he had another shot or two after that where he just sort of kept going. It didn't look like, I know it's a friendly, but it didn't look like he was really too bothered by it, which I
mhm.
like that. He looks like a real confident player. Certainly looked bright, and I think he was the one probably I was most excited about as well, going into it to see what he was like, and certainly showed flashes of what we can expect. I would hope, and looks like he's going to be tricky, and if he keeps coming in on that left foot and getting the shots off, then I'm going to be happy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know, as John Kelo points out, that Cove had a try list. I think he's speaking about, he says the Cove try list was a monster. I think he's speaking about in their number 6, who was the centre back that I thought was very physical up against Yengi. But in terms of Cove's physical approach, I thought they weren't short of making a tough challenge or two. There was times during the first 45 where I'm not saying, as I said, concerned, but thought maybe at times Milanovic was looking for the foul rather than kind of getting on with it. As such, did you see any concerns yourself around the way he dealt with the physical nature of Cove's approach?
I know what you mean. There was a couple of times he sort of just ran into bodies and then sort of turned and hoped
Yeah.
a few times. And I think, I mean, how often is that the case when players come across and come to Scotland for the first time? And you'd hope that he'll learn that he probably isn't going to get given these things over here, and he'll adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as I said, it's one of these things. We're not being critical. It just kind of the first time seeing some of these players and being exposed to seeing them again, kind of you see all different sides. Like I remember saying to Johnny, who I went with, I thought Jack Milne looked nervy, but I saw someone reply to the tweet I put out halftime from the podcast account that he thought Jack Milne was bossing it. So, everyone's going to have taken different opinions. Obviously, that centre back pairing was Jack Milne and Mats Knusters. Do you think that could be something that we kind of move towards more of, or when Christers Tobers is back fit, it'll be him alongside Knusters?
I think, based off his Scottish Cup final performance alone, absolutely colossus back there. He's got to be given a chance, because if he can do that week in, week out, and he's one of our own and he gets it, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I want to see him given that chance, and especially since we've seen that, okay, on the biggest of stages for us, he can come in and put in a brilliant performance. I think he should be given that chance. I think he probably will, given, Tobers, since coming in, his injury record's been a real concern, and the fact he wasn't involved at the weekend suggests Jack Milne's got that chance to go and grab it and go and really impress, because if Tobers isn't fit by the time that Ipswich game comes round and Jack Milne is still in there putting in a good performance and he's got the minutes in the legs and he's fit, I don't see why Jack Milne shouldn't get the chance to start the league campaign as first choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the other thing to maybe look at from a defensive point of view was Giafami, the left back that we brought in, has picked up a knock over in Portugal, and he missed out, which saw Graham Shinney at left back, which I was pretty impressed. Sievert Nielsen was also in attendance, and John Kelo saying that he spoke to him during the game and says he's still out till next week, so probably not going to be involved against Fulham, which is the rumoured behind closed doors friendly. I actually don't know where that is, if we're actually travelling down to Craven Cottage or if it's somewhere halfway for each team, but I think that's quite an interesting one, a good test against a decent Premiership side ahead of the Ipswich game. In terms of the first 45 minutes, as I said, it was a pretty dull affair. I think even, the goal that Ante Palaversa scores, I'm sure Robbie Much will be disappointed because he does get a decent hand to it and it creeps in, but I know one of Phil's bugbears last season was our lack of taking efforts from the edge of the area, but as you mentioned, Milanovic wasn't afraid to, and then Palaversa doing that to grab the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a decent strike from Palaversa. I don't know if Much maybe saw it late, and that's why he didn't quite get across it completely. But yeah, Palaversa took it well, and I agree with Phil in that, as I mentioned earlier, the amount of times there was a chance just to take the shot on and see what happens. You never know. You might get a deflection. Keeper might spill it. Might come back out, or God forbid, you might score. And so it was certainly encouraging that Pal Versa took that on, and then like Milanovic did several times as well. And if that's going to be something we see more of, then I'm certainly happy with that. And I say you never know when these things happen. But out with the goal, it was pretty dull, and it was just, this is about fitness. And I think I did say at one point out loud to my dad, I just turned to him and went, I'm bored. I felt like how Rory must do when it gets to about 80 minutes. I'm bored.
Yeah, can I go home yet? And as after Glow 1010 says, he says, how exactly do you get minutes in your legs? I've heard it, so I'm going to repeat it, but I think that's just one of those footballing cliches, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of them on here, isn't there? I think if someone went back and listened to the amount of cliches even per episode, they'd be quite impressed.
In terms of anything else from the first half, as we said, there wasn't really much to stand out. For me, I was, I think maybe due to the lack of quality, Leighton Clarkson's range of passing, given the space he was afforded, really stood out. Reminded me of a couple of the games back end of last season. Was it not Motherwell at home where he really shone when he was given that space and time in the middle of the park? The way he was picking out either Topi Keskinen, which was great to see Topi back, or Milanovic. And actually, I thought Fletcher Boyd did really well in that first 45 minutes. So probably those two players were that standout, if you want to call it that, from that first 45.
Yeah, neat and tidy is the best way I'd probably describe those two. There's certainly a lot of quality there, and I think especially with Clarkson as well, it was just so clear. Like he has got that technical ability that is above a lot of the rest of them, yeah, he did impress me, and I hope we can see a lot more of that because he could be key. Going into next season. Very impressive. And Fletcher Boyd, yeah, as I said, he was dropping deep a lot of the time, I felt like. And again, just very neat and tidy. And hopefully he can get back on that incredible goal trail that we saw when he first broke through it, if he does get given the chance. But I don't know if he's maybe one that might head out on loan, or with the whole European quota that, and having to have players probably to make up the squad, if he might stay.
Yeah, exactly. Sam Gordon saying Clarkson showing some of that new dad energy. I suppose anything to get out of a few sleepless nights. But I, me and Johnny did speak about that in terms of Fletcher Boyd. Based on that first 45 minutes, is that him trying to lay down a marker to Jimmy Talene that he wants to stick around and be involved in, and grab a chance? There was a lot made last season that Fletcher's chance was kind of robbed, if you want to say, when Duke returned, and that was a little bit of a block in terms of his pathway. So I don't think he's done himself any harm, and it'll be interesting, I guess, to see what his involvement is against Fulham and Ipswich, to see if there is maybe a first team opportunity, as you've said as well. But Jam Ultra saying, maybe he's a player that needs minutes, and a loan would be a good option. So yeah, interesting, I guess, to see for him what's next.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, how many players have there been coming through over however many years where they're meant to be the next thing, and then they never really got a chance at Tawdry, but they never really went out on loan, and things just sort of peter out for them. So it is a difficult one, but I just think with Europe, he's probably the one youngster who could step in and get a chance throughout the season, and we know he is capable, certainly at this level, but in terms of reaching his potential, perhaps alone would be better, playing every single week against proper Manes down in the Championship or League One or wherever, just to sort of build that physicality and get that game experience.
Yeah, and well, you mentioned it before we jumped on the live, because I guess I was going to come on to the second half and mention Nick Suman and probably not having anything to do. Dimitar Mitov, I thought he made one smart save in the first half. It was a really good reaction save, and then you mentioned kind of the follow-up, clearing the shot off the line as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a stramash, wasn't there? And other than that, he didn't have an awful lot to do. It was pretty quiet, as probably expected. Nothing really to note on the goalkeepers. Nick Suman, I suppose, did very well to prevent an own goal. from Mark Kjartansson, who just absolutely rifled the ball back at him at one point. That's about the only thing of note with Nick Suman. And Christopher Maitland, I suppose, mentioned he looks confident with the ball at his feet, and he did, which was impressive. I think he looks skinnier than I expected for a goalkeeper, and that's something I'll maybe that's something to keep an eye on, whether he fills out a little bit as well.
Yeah, and also good to have Chris Mainland with us on the show tonight. Met him at the game at Cove. He's over from New Zealand, and that was his first time, I think, seeing the Dons in action since 2009, I think it was, he said, or 2019. But, I mean, not exactly the most exciting game to do, but I'm hoping him tuning into the live tonight's at a much more sensible time in comparison to when he tunes in live from New Zealand. So good to have you with us, Chris. But speaking of those changes at half time, Vinny, Adil Ashish, Gav Malloy, Nicky Devlin, Kjartansson, Shaden Morris, Pape, and Nick Suman all entered the fray. Again, in terms of the newbies, I guess the excitement was Ashish coming on, but again, really nothing to kind of get excited about. I thought, he looked good and direct, had a free kick that hit the wall. But for me, and I think out of all our newbies, the one that really stood out was Kjartansson.
Yeah, certainly. I was surprised by how sort of old he looks. He was a unit, wasn't he? He was
tall as well.
very impressive. Yeah, tall, which he looks like Nilsson Jr., if I'm honest. And he was really aggressive as well. That was the other big takeaway, I thought. He wasn't
really,
even though it was a friendly, he wasn't shy in putting himself about, which I definitely enjoyed. And if he can learn from the likes of Shinnie and Nilsson as well, I suppose Palaversa to a degree coming in at such a young age, I think that can only be a good thing. He looked impressive, nearly scored an own goal, but yeah, certainly a unit, and I think he will be involved heavily throughout the season, and certainly looked impressive, just his aggression mainly for me.
Yeah, and that is certainly right. I think there was a challenge that he kind of really snapped at a Cove midfielder, and you probably think if that was a competitive game, a yellow card could have quite easily came out. And again, as much as I mentioned Fletcher Boyd putting down a marker to maybe be involved in first team games regularly, the thought might have been that Kjartansson might not have maybe been there at the forefront of the manager's mind, but certainly put himself at the forefront of a few fans' mind, if not the manager, based on that 45 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. And another thing I noticed when we signed him, now this is my football manager knowledge coming into play here. We signed him when he was 18. So if he's here for 3 years and he's still here for that 4th year, then he counts as a homegrown player, I believe, because it's between the ages of 18 and 21. Now, whether he'll be around that long, I don't know, because he looks a serious talent, and you know, us holding on to players that we've brought in from abroad so far for that long is quite unlikely. But yeah, just very impressive, and I'm excited to see him grow and sort of adjust to the Scottish game. But as I say, with that physicality he brings, it seems like a really good fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agreed. In terms of Adil Ashish, obviously, did an episode with Gal from the Roker Report. Red Hawks, looking forward to seeing more of him. You also, in that same vein, did you maybe expect, based on Gav's glowing report of him, to see more of Adil on Saturday?
I thought again he's probably fallen into the neat and tidy category. It looked clear that there is a player there, and if he can get that consistency that was mentioned on that episode, which I listened to and enjoyed, despite the fact Gav's a Markham, if we can get that sort of consistency out of him, then hopefully we've got a serious player on our hands. But I just thought, yeah, neat and tidy. Again on Adil Ashish.
Felt really good close control. The only thing I kind of took from his performance was how much he enjoyed drifting out to the left, which kind of him and Vinny were kind of tripping up each other at times.
And Pape was bloody doing that as well. He was drifting out left as well, leaving nobody up front. Sorry, on Pape, whilst I mention him, I thought the introduction of him and Shaden Morris, even though it was a friendly against Cove Rangers, still really was the most exciting part of the game. Those two coming on.
And good to see Shaden still has that one trick of being able to drop the shoulder, beat the last defender, and chip the ball into the box, but wasn't really entirely effective. Staying with Red Hawk and his comments in the section here, do we think Vinny is staying? He says, hope so. Do you think, again, we'll maybe come on to the players that went to Turriff, but there was talk about Vicente Bizawan being told he could find another club. Has he shown anything? I said to Johnny, like I saw his Instagram story, Vinny's, and he put up kind of like his own personal highlight reel from Portugal. I don't know if you've seen it.
I did see that, yeah.
Of course you saw it. I knew you would have. And I was like, oh, there's a player here. And I know, look, you can glorify your own CV, you can glorify your own highlights reel, but there is something there that I hope we could see this season. I'm kind of in agreement with Red Hawk. I hope he stays.
Yeah, he's one that I've really, really wanted to work out, and for several reasons, with injuries, with not getting along with managers, or whatever the problem's been over the years, with his attitude, apparently, potentially as well, or just managers not liking him. I really want it to work out, but I do think he does have something. There is something there, and he's just never really been able to stay fit, stay in the team to show it and to sort of improve as well. I would like it to happen. I'm not sure. I think he's probably one that would stay and be utilised if there's not a move come about for him. I think, and I think he could certainly be useful. We saw that at points last season before he got injured. However, I'm not confident that he will still be around. However, I do hope so. And for his sticky toffee pudding addiction as well, I suppose I hope so too.
I think as well, it's even one of those that if he does stick around, he's a player that we could utilize in the league. On that Thursday, Sunday rotation, we do need a big squad. Injuries, we saw last season how much that didn't curtail us, but affected us. And I know it's going to be difficult to keep a bigger squad happy, but I think as much as I said on the last episode about listening to Stephen Gunn and the squad size and the learnings that the club have taken from when we were last in the group stages, it would kind of go against what Stephen's been saying if we were to, get rid of a few players and go into the season with a trimmed squad, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. There will be players probably that miss out in the European squad, and if someone was to stick around, you'd probably imagine it was him. But at the same time, as you say, if he came in to play domestically, to play in the cups as well, I suppose I certainly wouldn't be aggrieved at that, because I think he has shown flashes. It's just the consistency, essentially, of him even staying fit, let alone showing what he can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think overall, from Saturday's game, we saw glimpses of what players can do in Milanovic, in Yangi, in Oshish, Kjartansson as well. So there's, positives to take. I thought it was interesting as well that Nicky Devlin played both left back and right back in swapping that position, initially coming on it at left back. And it was also good to see Gav Malloy come back and get some minutes under his belt as well. But I can't really say that, leaving the ground after Nicky Devlin put the ball in the net, that I felt there was kind of really anything to take away. I know we've titled the episode Ready for Action. I'm not quite saying that we are ready for action, but you're never going to be ready to take on Hearts at Tynecastle, after your second game of pre-season, are you?
No. Especially with McInnes in their dugout. God, I've got a really big fear about that, but we'll speak about that closer to the time. But no, yeah, you can tell it's early in our process, and I suppose that's going to be a given when we don't start our competitive action until much later. I thought on Nicky Devlin, bloody brilliant footwork for that goal, and a nice wee flick from Pape as well. And I think with him playing at left back, and then obviously Gyamfi missed out, Shinnie played at left back, and we know Jensen can go across there as well. I don't think we'll be making any more additions in that position. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I actually said that to Johnny as well, because really, if we really wanted to stretch the squad in that sense, you could put Gav Malloy out there. I know he played left centre back previously, so could you drop him in as a utility left back if really desperate.
Yeah.
Because
And likewise, Milne on the other side, I suppose, as well. And if one of them has to go over to the other side.
Yeah, so again, it's maybe not an immediate priority, and I think as Phil's already pointed out, the immediate priority still remains a striker. As I said, no real takeaways from the game at Balmoral. Possible frustrations in the final third that we didn't score more goals, but it's not going to be held against them given it was the meaning behind the game. But after the game, as most of those in attendance at Cove were making their way home, it was announced that an Aberdeen 11 was taking on Turriff, and that some of the first team players that hadn't travelled to Cove were in attendance. Dante Polvara captaining the squad, Esther Sokler and Slobodan Rubizic also in the squad, both getting on the score sheet as that Dons 11 ran out 2-0 winners. And the maybe forgotten, again, in terms of speaking about cover for right back, Richard Jensen, also involved. Yes, Tricky Dicky was there. I know you'd forgotten about him, but people maybe also then saying, what does that mean? Those players going to Turriff, does that mean that they're maybe on their way out? Why is Dante there then if that's what it means? And you know what, like a frenzy can quickly be whipped up on the internet these days. Do we read too much into it? I know Jimmy Tillene came out and said, look, it was all about, ensuring players were getting minutes. Those players maybe more so in terms of 90 minutes. I know Sam Gordon also saying that, kind of given your comments about Sokler and Dante maybe playing up at Turriff given the pitch, it was possibly a surprise then to see Vinny at Cove given his injury and not then being punted as we've described it up to Turriff.
Yeah, that's true. I thought it was really weird that they didn't mention it before the game kicked off, by the way. Or before it was after the Cove game, which was very odd because surely people who were in the area they'd have known already, but close enough would have gone if had they known about it. Bizarre. But I don't think there's all that much to read into it. And initially I was a bit like, oh, if they're there instead of being at Cove, that's a bit odd. But I didn't, before I'd known about that, I was thinking, why is the likes of Polvara and all that not involved? Sokler,
even Ambrose, like if we're speaking about strike force.
Yeah, certainly. And the thing I could take away from my Dante Polvara hopes was that he was the captain as well, which gives me a bit more confidence that he'll be sticking around because we've seen some discourse on that as well. What did the T's mean next to the players, Glenn? Do you know on the team sheet?
They meant that they were trialists. That was the Comet system. Now, those involved in kids football or amateurs, juniors will maybe know how terrible system Comet is in terms of player registration. So my only thinking is that it might have been to do with both the fact that Slobodan Rubizic and Richard Jensen were out on loan and have not been fully, or Comet has not re-registered those players fully to Aberdeen, so that we had to list both of them down as trialists. That's my only thinking on that.
I did think it would have meant trialist, but then I was like, well, why the hell would they have that? And also the loans would have ended, well, let's say they ended even at the end of June, where some of these things do, like a couple of weeks ago. It's still, very odd. I don't know.
We've obviously got an Aberdeen 11 travelling to Harlaw Park on tomorrow night, 16th of July, maybe tonight for those that are listening on audio. It'll be interesting to see if there's any first teamers involved in that game, given that we play both for Martin at the weekend and Fulham. And I guess interesting then also with the two games at the weekend, if there is a bit of a squad split and what we can read into that.
Oh God, this is we're really desperate for stuff. There's not a lot of rumours, and Aberdeen social media is going into what does them playing in Turriff mean? I suppose that it is worth looking into and discussing. However, we're not going to decipher anything too much from this. I expect players to be spread across just to make sure they get minutes. I probably think there will be some involved in Veruri, maybe those sort of on the fringes or those that have been talked about that are on their sort of way out of the door. Maybe you'd think like Richard Jensen, Ital. But it'll be interesting, and if anyone is going, make sure you give Daniel Agnew for Inverurie a lot of grief. A Tesco loyal, so make sure you give him a lot of grief for you there. But it'll be interesting, and the fact there's football, we have got these games, and we can split, our relatively sizable squad right now between these games to get them up to sharpness, whether it be here or when we're moving them on. I suppose it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and as Sam Gordon says, welcome to RTG, the speculation podcast. That would have actually been a brilliant title for this episode, because it's a lot of speculation about ifs, buts, and maybes around that. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see minutes given to players and who plays where this weekend as well. But of course, us as fans are always going to read into things extensively and probably miss the boat a lot of the times. Don's Live also occurred this weekend on Sunday at Tekka. There was 2 sessions held. Did you go to either of them at all?
I was not in attendance, and I couldn't get my mic off mute there. No, I wasn't there. A lot of queuing, Glenn, was there?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great event if you enjoyed standing around in lengthy queues. As I've said, it was a 90-minute wait to get a photo with the Scottish Cup. Worth it for me to get one with Rory, and queued for best part of an hour to get the meet and greet with the players. And I think, as good an event it was for, in terms of having stuff for all the family and fans. I know Robbie Henratty's in the comments saying he really enjoys it. Hopefully it becomes an annual event in the calendar. I think for it to become a successful annual event, there's going to have to be a lot of learnings from the weekend. I think they could have, done the photography with the trophy, especially the Scottish Cup, a lot better. An official photographer taking photos, maybe even charge fans a couple of quid, an extra moneymaker, because let's be honest, it was a commercial event for the club and it was about making money. So kind of missed out on there. I thought, in terms of trying to hear the Q&As, you couldn't hear it unless you were physically attending it. So whilst folk are stuck in the queues, you couldn't kind of hear that. And I know some people have commented on the value for money, or maybe feeling that they missed out on that. I didn't really feel I missed out in terms of value for money, although Rory will tell you he was bored because he didn't get to go in a bouncy castle and had to stand in queues all day. But
respect it.
Kind of every kid's birthday party's got a bouncy castle, and kids' birthday parties seem to occur every 3 or 4 weeks. So really, seeing the Scottish Cup takes priority over him jumping on a bouncy castle for 10 minutes.
He might not think that now, but maybe he'll understand in future years, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I don't really know how they reduce the sort of queuing unless you just reduce the amount of people that go. Because how else can you do it, or add more events for people to go and do things to take them away from a queue? But then, if it's meeting players or getting photos of the trophy, people are always going to choose that over a bouncy castle, as you say. Fucking Rory.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the way that the Scottish Cup photos was done, I know some people say, some people were taking too many photos, some people weren't taking enough photos. But as I said, if you put in an official photographer, they took 3 or 4 photos, that would have sped the queue up. In terms of the meet and greet, I think that was probably the poorest in terms of how it was handled. Given the session was at 11, why the players didn't turn up till the back of 1? Could they have turned up earlier, or turned up and been there kind of throughout that 3.5-hour session? Similarly for the afternoon session, I'm sure those that were there had the same issues. We were the penultimate people to meet the line of players, which was a mix of the men and women's team. So we were the second last people to meet Graham Shinney, and at the start we were getting told, there's 0% chance you'll get to meet the players. There's kids in that queue, and them saying, what do you mean, Mum, I'm not going to get to see the players? Like, I thought that wasn't kind of maybe dealt with, and that wasn't like, an AFC issue. That was a Tekka security, and we all know what that can be like. So yeah, and I think, then there was a point where you're queuing, you think, I've been queuing for 45 minutes here, how are you going to turn around and say, you queued all that time, you've got to leave without seeing the players? So, like I said, definitely learnings to take, but good to see the club branching out and trying something different, because, if they didn't try something different, they'd be getting chastised for doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think certainly, especially for kids, getting the chance to go and meet these players as well at an event like this, where unless you're outside the ground early,
Exactly.
on a match day. They're not going to get that chance for them to have the chance to do that as well. I think it's certainly a good idea, but it sounds like things could be improved.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I had a very positive chat with Rob Wicks during the event, and, he said that there's definitely going to be learnings to take away. And the hope is, as Robbie Hanratty said, for it to potentially be an annual event. So, without the feedback, whether it be positive or negative, the club and Tekka themselves can't learn. So yeah, it'll be interesting, as I said, to see if they do that next season. But in terms of agreements, because there's been agreements between the club and Tekka for Dons Live, that'll take us on to the cooperative agreement that the club have announced today. So far, two, maybe more to come. Be interesting to see. First one announced this morning, Calm, in League Two. Again, myself and Phil spoke about, on the back of Stephen Gunn's interview on the last episode, about what clubs could the Dons utilise in and around the northeast. So Elgin City were announced as Aberdeen having an official cooperative agreement, meaning that we will send certain young players straight to Elgin City and Borough Briggs, and they will then get the opportunity to progress their career in League Two. And then pointing to the fact about the impressive facilities that Elgin have got up there, and obviously looking to build on last season's playoff place and push this season for them to try and get promoted for the first time out of League Two.
Yeah, that was sort of the main thing I looked at, because I don't know all that much about the facilities and who's involved at Elgin City, admittedly, but they were competitive last year, and I think if we've got young boys going in there, well, certainly Elgin City will be looking to do the same, if not go one better and get promoted next season. And if we've got young boys going there, learning their trade, I certainly at a very young age, playing with Mannies that where they earn money from this, and they sort of need the results as well for the income too. Where it matters a lot more than youth football. It's competitive Mannies football, so it'll certainly be good for them to get involved. And I mean, I don't know how much about these young lads either, so I don't know how involved they're going to get, but certainly the chance to be around there, around competitive action where it matters, can only be a good thing. And I'm glad that we've got in quite early, I think, with these cooperative deals, because I've not really seen anyone else announcing theirs. So the fact we're getting in early and getting our clubs that we want as well is certainly a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's good that the club have, as you say, announced it early. We've got the clubs we want, which we'll maybe touch on a little bit in League One. But as you said, we're not going to sit here and say we know much about Dylan Ross, Jamie Mercer, and Noah McDonnell, who are the three defenders, Dylan being a left back and Jamie and Noah being centre backs, all 17-year-olds heading up to Elgin to play first team football. So yeah, I think a good opportunity, obviously, as well, the club having not really direct dealings, but Tom Ritchie, of course, leaving the Dons in the summer, now first choice keeper up at Elgin as well. So, maybe a little bit of a connection there, and good to build a strong connection with a team from the northeast.
Certainly, and I suppose for the young lads going up there, certainly going to be beneficial having, there's more than one of them going up there, so already know people, but if they've got Tom Ritchie as well, you'd like to think they'll have crossed paths with at least as well at Aberdeen. That can only help in their sort of settling in too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think, as you said, the fact that Aberdeen got out there first, I think other clubs are exploring this option. So for us to seem like we're at the forefront of this, it feels like quite an exciting initiative. Players going to a club that we've got the partnership. Obviously, the clubs that are receiving the players seem to be delighted by it. As I said, it takes us on to League One, because I said, when I'm speaking about the northeast, you've got Cove, Peterhead, Inverness. I think they were the three clubs, more so Cove, and that everyone expected to. But if rumours are to be believed, Cove didn't want the players we offered. So Kelly Hearts are our nominated cooperative agreement club in League One.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting that. And forgive me, I'm not sure where Montrose are in the leagues these days, but there's also,
of course,
they potentially might be League One.
Yeah.
So that was another one I was maybe thinking about. And I wasn't expecting Kelty Hearts. at all. But I know we've sent players on loan there before, so there's clearly a good sort of relationship between the clubs. And they finished 6th last season. They'll be looking to improve and getting those playoff spots. You would think next season. So again, at least it's set up early, and it's certainly interesting that it's Kelty Hearts. I mean, it means we'll be looking out for their results and players involved as well, I suppose, which we didn't expect to happen. And I guess another thing is maybe that with sort of Inverness, I know we've already sent out Alfie Stewart then on loan there, and Peterhead and Cove. I imagine regardless, we will still have players going out there. One would imagine, given just the ease of location.
Yeah, I know I mentioned potential, obviously, of Alfie Bavidge, the rumours there, given his success last season, see where he ends up. And the players going to Kelty are Lewis Carroll, the centre-back, and I remember reading his name and thinking, he was linked with Nottingham Forest back in January. From the City Ground to Central Park. So be an interesting one, but maybe views the fact of staying in Scottish football in regular minutes as a boost to his career. Joseph Teasdale, I think for most maybe that followed that league winning under 18 side, will be remembered for some of his goals, and Cooper Mason as well. They're the 3 players heading to Kelty. The indications, I think, from the statement were there's potentially option for a championship one. I guess Arbroath's going to be up there as one, obviously with Finlay Marshall, since the last time we recorded, being announced as moving to them on loan, and then bagging a man of the match performance as they beat St Mirren on penalties in their opening League Cup group stage game. Could Ross County potentially be another option for a cooperative agreement, or maybe not with their hopes to jump straight back into the Premiership?
That is sort of what I was thinking with them, and given the way they've been adding, I'm not sure the youngsters will be ready for that when they're chasing for a title. Arbroath was certainly the other one that jumped out, but then you'd think Dundee and Dundee United would both be champing at the bit to use them also. So I'm not sure, but clearly we've got a good relationship with them as well. Plenty of players going there sort of over the years, and Finlay Marshall, the latest of that. So it will be interesting, and they might throw a surprise out there again, like Kelty Hearts. But I would like for us to get someone else at the championship level as well, just so we can have someone at all levels to test out all the young players, basically. And more competitive football for these youngsters, even if they're just in and around and involved. It's only a good thing if they're not getting that here.
Yeah, exactly. And we've already spoken about myself and Phil in the last episode about the Aberdeen 11 taking on Buckie in the first pre-season game for those youngsters. They also then took on a Peterhead 11 and Rory McAllister's testimonial, 2 back-to-back 4-0 defeats. So maybe them going out and getting that first team minutes in a more competitive nature is something that will benefit them and the club in the long run. Again, we look back to the game on Saturday against Cove and Zach Toe coming on for the last 10 minutes. And, you've said there's a severe lack of transfer rumours. Didn't know you need to go into LinkedIn to find the transfer rumours, because I know Zach's dad posted how proud he was of his son playing, only for someone involved in Keith to then post that they were delighted to have Zach's services for the rest of the season, to which his dad said, "I don't think it's been announced." And then whoever it was that was commenting said, "The paperwork's done, so it's all good."
Fair play. I thought it was nice for him to be involved. And again, he looks like he put himself a little bit as well in that short amount of time he was on. So good for him to get that experience of playing with the first team, and all the best to him and all the rest of the young lads on their loans. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come given the recent shake-ups as well.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, Alfie Stewart going back to Cali on loan till January, so a 6-month loan after previously just completing a 6-month loan spell up there. So some outgoings in terms of the younger members of the squad, but Dylan Lobban and Vitols, as Colin Gales pointed out, still remain with the squad, in and around the first team squad, but yet to see minutes. We'll see how that develops over the week. Don't think there's anything else for us to cover.
No, don't think so. For there not being any real signings or real football, I think we've done all right there.
Yeah, but we'll see what other cooperative agreements come out between now and next week, and if there's some stream to some effect, we'll maybe take some pickings out of the Fulham game and what we take from that. I'm maybe going to try and get along to Harlaw Park tomorrow and see if there's any of the Aberdeen 11 to look out for, as Callum Duncan says. If not, I know maybe some people will head over to North Lodge on Saturday to see an Aberdeen 11 again, depending on the fixture. Given the fact that 2,200 was Cove's record attendance, which seems massive, just shows how big we are to that it takes the biggest club in the city to come calling to get their record attendance. I don't think it'd be quite far to beat for Martin's highest attendance if a few 100 people turned up to North Lodge at the weekend. So yeah, I think we'll try and catch up next week ahead of the Ipswich game, and obviously maybe have some signings to talk about. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be very nice. It would make me very happy, certainly. But it's certainly been good to be back, to be involved. And Chris Mainland, hope you're happy, my man.
Yeah. And well, one final thing then, Callum, because Jam Ultra's asked it a couple of times. Has Topi Keskinen had enough of a break before people get a break from our voice?
I was surprised that he was involved so quickly, if I'm honest. I thought he'd have a couple extra weeks, or an extra week or two, perhaps, before getting involved. But also kind of get the feeling he's just the type of guy that just loves football and just wants to play regardless.
Yeah, and it's only 45 minutes. I think he has had, obviously he didn't travel to Portugal with the squad, I don't think. So I don't know how much kind of training has been put in for him. But I'm sure he's enjoyed the break regardless. And you can all have a break from our voices. Until next week, once again, thanks very much for watching if you've been doing so here on YouTube and also commenting along with the live. Remember to like the video, subscribe. There's been a lot of you subscribed since the last video, so we're nearly at 2,350, which is great before the season starts as well. Remember to follow us on your audio platform of choice as well. Notifications on to be notified whenever we're out. So until next time, we'll see you then.